We are in Matthew chapter 10. We are on this in this series where we're talking about mission and purpose. And if you want to get, I think maybe this time of year, perhaps more than the other time of the year, just because of what our country faces in this election season. This time, just about every year, we have this, we're used to this idea that if you want somebody to follow you, then you've got to make some promises to them that you're going to make their life better, right? If you follow me, then you'll have your life, you're just the quality of your life or whatever it will be better. Like, you just follow me, you'll have more money, you'll have less to worry about. Vote for me, and your family will be better off. This is what we do. This is what politicians do. A few years ago, one of my daughters was she was running for some office in her school government, and her slogan was like her big thing was, "Hey, vote for me, and I'll get you more bacon." That's what it was. Literally, it was. Like, how are you going to do that? She goes, "I don't know, but people like bacon." I'm like, "You sound like a politician. Like, you have no follow through, just promises." And so, but it's like, that's it. That's what we do. We just, hey, vote for me and follow me, and I'll make your life better. Well, we come to Matthew chapter 10, and Jesus is going, hey, follow me, and life's going to get really hard. Follow me, it's just going to get hard. You follow me, you're probably going to have less money because you're going to be generous with what you have. Follow me, and you're not going to be safe because you could go to a place and perhaps even live in a place where the gospel is not received, and it may put your family at risk. The following Jesus will be the hardest thing that you do because all of a sudden you live with this tension that you've never experienced before. That you're living for something that's more than a job. You're living for something that's more than a vacation or more money or more newer stuff and whatever it is. And if that's not enough, if that tension is not enough that you feel and that like, okay, I'm denying this to live for this, and I'm living on less, and I'm less safe. Jesus says to top it all off, and people will hate you for it. People will hate you for living this life. They will hate you that you're generous with your money. And they will hate you that you bring up Jesus and you talk about the gospel, and they will hate you for this. This is what Jesus is saying in Matthew chapter 10. These are Jesus' instructions. Matthew chapter 10, these are Jesus' instructions specifically to his disciples, his apostles. But the point of these instructions, it just is for all of us, and that's, what does it mean to follow Jesus? Like, what does it look like to follow Jesus? What does it mean? Like, I say I'm a follower of Jesus, then what does that mean? I can't make that up. Like, I can't determine, no, this is what it means to follow Jesus. Jesus makes that call. He says, this is what it means to follow me. This is what it looks like to follow me. This is what he's doing in Matthew chapter 10. What does it look like to follow Jesus? What does it mean to follow Jesus? What does it mean to be a high schooler and follow Jesus in school, in class, on the team? What does it mean to work at your job and follow Jesus? And so Jesus begins by saying, I've called you, I've saved you, I've loved you, you're mine, I've made you mine. And the reason I've called you, the reason I've saved you is to send you out to take the gospel, to take this message wherever you go, to talk about me wherever you go, to make me known all over the world. And here's where I'm sending you. It's what we saw last week. And here's where I'm sending you. I'm sending you to the wolves. That's what he says. I'm sending you to the wolves. And here's what that looks like. He says, some of you are going to be flogged in the synagogue. Some of you are going to be dragged before governors and kings. Family will turn on you, possibly put you to death. You will be hated. You will be persecuted. If they've done these things to me, Jesus says, if they've done these things to me, then if you're following me, looking like me, then of course they will do it to you. And this is where we pick up today in 26. He says, so have no fear of them. Have no fear of them. You're going to be hated, persecuted, flogged, put to death. Have no fear of them. And we read that and we go, well, of course I don't have to fear because that's just not our experience. That's just not really threatened by a flogging or being put on trial or being delivered to death by my family for following Jesus. That's just not our reality. Okay, got it, Jesus. I don't have to fear. I'm not fearing. But what if Jesus said, I'm sending you to the wolves, and here's what the wolves, here's what that looks like. I'm sending you to the wolves. And when you talk about Jesus, when you make my name known, Jesus would say, then you're going to be mocked at your job. You're going to be made fun of at school. You're going to be misunderstood. You're going to be labeled as a bigot. You're going to be labeled as simple-minded. You're going to lose promotions. You're going to lose deals. You're going to be isolated by your family. You're going to lose some really good friends following me. All because you open up your mouth and you share the gospel. Well, now, all of a sudden, that seems like a reality. That seems like maybe that could happen. That seems like our reality right now. And all of a sudden, there is a reason to fear. And it causes me to think twice. Especially when all it takes for me to avoid all of that, to avoid being made fun of, to avoid being labeled, and to avoid all of that, to avoid loss of money and promotions and deals and reputation. The only thing that it would take for me to remove the threat of all of that is to just keep my mouth shut. It's to just not talk about the gospel, but that's not an option. Being a follower of Jesus and keeping your mouth shut about the gospel is not an option. Not saying anything is out of the question. A couple of reasons. Paul says in Romans chapter 10, he says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. That we can't not confess with our mouth, because it's the confessing, the going and telling that reveals what's in our heart. That out of our heart, the mouth confesses that Jesus is Lord. In another place in Scripture, it says that out of them, you want to know what's coming out of your mouth when you say something like, well, where did that come from? The Scripture says, let me tell you where it came from. It came from your heart. Like your mouth just speaks the overflow of what's coming from your heart. So if the gospel is in your heart, if Jesus Christ being King and Lord, if that is on your heart, that's just going to come out. And later on in the same chapter, Romans 10, he says, so faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. That faith comes by hearing. If we don't speak the gospel, people will not come to faith in Jesus. I don't know how to make it any more clear than that. I know this whole idea of preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words. It is always necessary to use words when you're preaching the gospel. Always. We talked about, nobody comes to faith in Jesus Christ. Nobody comes to faith, understands the gospel by you just living a clean, moral life. That it comes by, hey, let me tell you what Jesus has done. Let me tell you what this is about. It comes by, faith comes by hearing. Somebody speaks the word of Christ. Somebody speaks the gospel, and they hear the gospel and come to faith in Jesus. So not opening your mouth is not an option. Because one, by opening our mouth, talking about the gospel, reveals the truth of what is really in our hearts. And two, by opening our mouth, people hear and come to faith in Jesus. But it is in the going and the telling of the gospel that we will face persecution. So opening your mouth, not saying something is not an option. So you must say something, but when you say something, you will be persecuted. That's what Jesus just said. It's going to happen. And yet he says, have no fear. Have no fear. I've called you to this. I have saved you for this. It will be the hardest thing you have ever experienced. I'm telling you, have no fear. Now, how can he say that? How can he say, hey, you got to talk about it? Oh, but when you talk about it, you're going to get persecuted. Maybe flogged, maybe turned in by your family, maybe made fun of, maybe ruin your reputation, or maybe lose out on a job. Maybe this is all a possibility. It's a probability, actually. But have no fear. How can Jesus say that? How is that even possible? Well, today Jesus is giving us 4 reasons to not fear. 4 reasons why you should not fear. How do you not fear those that are coming at you when you open up your mouth to talk about the gospel? How does that happen? How do you not fear when people are coming at you when you talk about Jesus? 1, by living for something later. By living for something later. Another way you could say it is to live with the end in mind. Live with the end in mind. That's what Jesus says. He says, so have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. Our culture, you know this, our culture does a great job of making sin look awesome and beneficial for everyone, right? Like our culture does a great job of going, hey, this is just what you do. What do you mean you're not doing this? Like this is what you do. This is what it looks like. This is what marriage looks like. This is what you do when you're dating. This is what you do with your money. What are you talking about? You're not doing it. It just makes sin look awesome, and it's beneficial to our lives. At the same time, our culture does a fabulous job of making godly living, following Jesus, look irrelevant and useless and silly. But if you know what happens in the end, you can take courage now. You can't live for what you see now. You can't live your life. You can't make your decisions about what you experience now, but you live your life with the end in mind, what's coming in the end on that day, when it's all said and done, when God will bring everything to light. Well, everything will be seen for what it really is. He will reveal the truth, where sin will be seen for what it really is, and righteousness will be rewarded. Like God, He sees it all right now. He's got it. And in the end, you will be vindicated for living a life of following Jesus. You will be vindicated for opening up your mouth and talking about Jesus. You want to know something that doesn't preach well? Here's something that doesn't preach well. It doesn't draw the masses, but it's true. And that is this: things might never resolve right now. Things might never resolve right now. Man, this pushes back on so much of the preaching and teaching of the prosperity gospel that says, look, if you just have enough faith, then God will make sure you got a fat bank account, you're healthy, and you'll just, and life will just go well for you if you just have enough faith and live a righteous life. But what Jesus is saying is, you may spend your entire life living a faithful, righteous life, pointing people to Jesus, and yet die young and broke. In fact, Jesus seems to say that is likely what is going to happen. But it's not about now, it's about the end. In the end, God sees it all now, and in the end, God will make it all right. You're saying, you're opening up, you're talking about it, and people are coming at you. Your friends are mocking you. You're feeling that you're losing out. They're pulling stuff. You're getting, but in the end, God will make it all right. He will vindicate you. It's like in marriage counseling. I've encountered this multiple times. When it comes to marriage counseling, I have a couple coming in to meet, and what they're looking for is like, okay, solve our situation in 4 sessions. Like, get our marriage fixed. Like, let's just get it back to where it needs to be, and like now. And the truth of the matter is, there is no formula for that. The truth is, things might not get resolved in 4 sessions or 4 months or even a year. In fact, it might be that the only resolution for your marriage comes in heaven. But you don't walk away. You don't walk away because he's not being the man that you need him to be, and you don't walk away because she just won't stop nagging. Listen, the Bible says that marriage is a picture between Jesus and his church. Is a picture of the relationship of Jesus and his church. I wonder if when the church nags, I wonder if when the church doesn't do what the church should be doing, I wonder if there's coming a time when Jesus will just walk away. No. You keep serving her. You keep respecting him. It may never get better here, but you are still called to serve her, to respect him. You say, well, how long? Until the end? Until she dies, or until he dies, or until you kill him? Or I didn't mean, that's not what I meant. Listen, don't do that. But listen, your greatest joy is later. It's later. Man, I just saw this bozo on TV the other day. Just your best life is now. Your best life is now. Your best life is, I pray to God my best life is not right now. My best life is coming. This is as bad as it gets for any follower of Jesus right here, right now. Amen? People will persecute you. They will turn on you. And it may never get better. But if you look to the end, you can take courage now, because in the end, God who sees it all, he will vindicate you. He goes on and he says, what I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. You need to know there are no secrets in Christianity. There are no secrets in Christianity. Someone tells you that they've following Jesus and they've got, knowledge of the Bible and they've got some secret that nobody, that is not true. They are a clown. They are false. They are a wolf. Get away from them. There are no secrets in Christianity. There's not some secret knowledge that you get. What Jesus says, what Jesus has done, it is to be proclaimed to the world. You don't keep it to yourself. What Jesus is telling you in his word is not only for you, it's for you to make known. It's for you to take it and put some feet to it, live it out, and then you proclaim it. You don't hold back. Listen, and you don't be a jerk about it, but you don't hold back. You don't give half-truths. You proclaim the whole message of the gospel. God's love for people as well as God's wrath for sin. The life and the death of Jesus. Jesus is Savior who will forgive you of your sin, and Jesus is the good, righteous King that you submit your life to. We give the whole message. When you're living for something later, you take courage to speak the gospel. The second way that we can share the gospel without fearing persecution is by fearing something greater. Fearing something greater. Paul says, Jesus says in 28, he says, and do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both body or soul and body in hell. We are a people, perhaps more than ever before, that are paralyzed by fear and stress. Fear of what's going to happen. Will I have enough money? How is my marriage going to make it? Are my kids going to have enough? Are they going to get this? Are they going to get picked for the right team? Are they going to have the right shoes? We fear being lonely. We stress about our health. And what Jesus is saying here is that you fear a whole lot of things, and the one thing that you don't fear is the one thing that you should fear the most. The thought of God should consume us. It should consume every day, waking up, thinking about this God who created us, who holds everything in his hands, who does whatever he wills with the universe, who holds our very life in his hands. And we wake up in the morning consumed by everything else. I got to get this done. I got to go here. And what about this? And I'm going to wear this. And what about this? And it was consumed by everything else. It's like we have this picture of God, like he's just so out of touch with our life. Like, yeah, God, I get you back then, but like this is like now. This is like 2023. Like I got like a life here. I got stuff going on right now. Like God is just so out of touch. Like he's like the crazy uncle that everyone just kind of ignores, and he's just standing in there in the corner just waiting for somebody to give him some attention. It's kind of how we treat God. It's like we just go about our lives. It's like, okay, I got things to take care of. I got things to do. I got friends, and I got a dating life. I got a marriage life. I got job. I got kids. I got things I got to get to. I got things I got to take care of. And then all of a sudden, when we get in a bind, as we go about managing our own life and doing whatever we want to do with our life, we get in a bind, and things don't go the way that we had hoped that they would go, or something unexpected pops up. And what do? We go to crazy uncle for some help. And we say, hey, I'm in this thing. And we just picture that God he's just so thrilled that we would just ask him. He's just so thrilled that we would even just come to him and pay any attention to him. We don't fear him. It's like if you've ever stood at the ocean, like there is an awe and a vastness and a beauty when you look at the ocean. But we stand there long enough and there's this reality that sets in, like this thing could swallow me up in a second. This is God. He is vast. We cannot fathom all that he is. He knows, he sees it all. He holds the ocean in his hand. And he chooses to show mercy to whom he wants to show mercy and to give grace to those whom he wants to give grace to. But he is a consuming fire, able to destroy both body and soul in hell, Jesus says. And so Jesus is saying, you need to change the way that you see life. You need to change the way in which you wake up in the morning and the way you view your day and you view your life and you view eternity. And you need to change the way that you see the world. You're giving your attention to and fearing all the wrong things. And so the question is, are we going to fear them, those that are coming at us, those that have the potential to take something from us that we really want, or are we going to fear him? Jesus says, don't fear the ones who can destroy your body. Fear the one who can destroy both your body and soul in hell. Look, when this is what matters most to you, when it's reputation, when it's the way the way you look, when it's the amount of money that you make, when it's your next vacation or the food that you eat or the job or your promotion or your position, when all of this matters most to you, then of course you will fear all of this. Of course, you'll fear all of it because you don't want it disturbed. Because somebody can take something from me. Somebody could take some of this, and this is what I want more than anything. But Jesus says, when you think long term, your sight is set on eternity stuff. And when that is that's what your desire is. Like, I don't have any greater desire than the eternal type stuff, like making sure people go to heaven, making sure people know life and purpose in this life, the way God created life to go right now, know that their sins are forgiven. Like, if that is what you're after more than anything else, then what is the worst that anybody could do to you now? Kill you? The only way, though, that is comforting to you is if you have died with Christ and your focus is on eternal stuff. In the 1500s, there was a Protestant reformer in England by the name of Hugh Latimer. He was known as a great preacher, preached all over England. And at one time, he had an opportunity to preach in front of King Henry VIII, the King of England. Later on, Latimer was reflecting on that experience he had when he was preaching, and King Henry was there, and he said, as I was preaching, there was something in my mind that said, I said to myself, Latimer, remember that the king is in the room. Be careful of what you say. Then he said, I said to myself, oh, but Latimer, remember that the King of Kings is in the room. Be careful of what you don't say. Jesus doesn't call us to live without fear, but he calls us to not fear what we shouldn't fear. And when we choose to not go and tell, we are choosing the lesser over the greater. Like, you want to know what it is that you fear the most? Well, then what is the thing that you fear losing the most? What is the thing that's just off limits? That is the thing that you fear the most. Number 3, you live your purpose without fear by remembering your worth. He goes on, he says, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. This speaks of God's sovereign care over you. That your life is not a random series of circumstances. It's just going about, he just kind of wound you up and let you go and just see what happens. No. Everything that comes to you, the big stuff, the normal stuff, the easy stuff, the difficult stuff, none of it touches you without first passing through the hand of your Father. You should take great delight and encouragement in that. and he knows you completely. But even the hairs, he says, of your head are all numbered. Even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore you are of more value than many sparrows. Jesus is going, it's not enough that he's all knowing and that he's all powerful. He even cares about and knows the number of hairs on your head. Now, I know for some of you that's not all that impressive, but it's, I'm seeing some shiny heads out there. But nonetheless, Jesus knows. Jesus knows. He cares. Now listen, I love my kids. I care for my kids greatly. But I don't know the number of their hair, the hair on their head. I have no idea. Honestly, I guess I don't care enough. I don't care enough. I've never once sat down and going, hey, I love you so much, let me count your hair. I've just never done that. We just don't care enough. But listen, God cares. He knows you inside and out. He knows you inside and out. In fact, I don't know. I think it felt like with every kid we had, it just seemed like we cared less. I'm saying that with my second born sitting right here. But like Maddie, like here's what I mean by that. Maddie, we like our oldest, we had like this book with her, like our footprint, you know what I'm talking about? And we like cut her hair and put it in, which I think is strange. We put that in there and put all these facts about her. And it just seemed like with every kid, it just got less and less to where when we had Addison, our youngest, we're like, I don't even think we have a book. And we're like, all right, she's born, let's go. Let's go home, we're good, you know. It's all good. Listen, but God cares deeply. He cares for you inside. He knows you inside and out. Jesus is going, the one who sends you as sheep to the wolves. It may not sound like it, but he is a good father who cares for you and loves you deeply. Therefore, you don't need to be afraid. And then number 4, you live out your purpose on mission by loving someone more. Loving someone more. Jesus says, so everyone who acknowledges me before men, I also will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. Do not think that I've come to bring peace to the earth. I've not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a person's enemies will be those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Listen, if we love something more than Jesus, then we will keep our mouths shut if we think that it might cost us whatever that something is. If me opening my mouth to talk about Jesus is going to cost me the thing that I love the most, then of course I will shut my mouth. I'm not going to talk about it. And so we don't get to just insert a fine print of exceptions here. It's like, okay, I'll do this. Like I'm all out. I'm all in on going on mission and living on mission, and taking. But the moment that I think that it's going to cost me this, now here's where the fine print comes. Like I'll do it till this point. I'll do it if it costs. Nobody can expect me to take it that far. And Jesus is going, there is no that far. He takes it all the way to family. It's like, well, how far do you want me to go, Jesus? Like, what can I, like, where is too much? And Jesus is going, well, listen, I'm just telling you, I'm taking it all the way to your family. It could be losing your family. It could be you're losing a mom, losing a dad, a son, a daughter. Now listen, he's not telling us to not love our families, but he's telling us that we should love him more. Listen, there are a lot of things that might cause us to keep our mouths shut about Jesus, but whatever those things are, it could be the risk of losing family, the risk of losing friends, the risk of losing a job, a reputation, whatever it is. Our denial shows us what it is that we love the most. So you want to know the thing that is supreme to you? Just run it through this. Like, what is the thing that if I were to lose it by talking about Jesus, bringing up the gospel, what is the thing that I'm just not willing to risk? Like, what is the thing that if it came down, like, this is the one thing, this is the two things, whatever that is, like, that will tell you this is what I love the most, that this is supreme in my life. And so Jesus, he says, whoever acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. Whoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father in heaven. So what does it mean to deny Jesus then? So if I'm going, okay, I'm not going to go that far, and so at this point, I deny. Well, what does that look like? What does denying Jesus look like? Well, I grew up in the 80s, and in the church in the 80s, where I don't know if some of you remember this, but when I was growing up, I was a kid. I was like in elementary school in the 80s and junior high, like beginning of middle school in the 80s. And I remember we would have these nights. My dad was a pastor. We would have these nights where we would go to the church, and I think it was like kind of around this time of year. And we'd go to church and we'd watch these movies, and these movies were all about like the end times. And so it was about like taking the mark of the beast. Like you would get it on your forehead, or you get it on your hand. I think maybe it was your right hand, and you take the mark of the beast. That meant you were denying Christ. So they would ask you, will you deny Christ? And then if you did not deny Christ, then they would take you and they would take your head off use a guillotine. Like it was the 80s, but they were still using guillotines. I just think it's strange, but they would shake your head off like this thing, and it's like, okay, that's what it means to deny Christ. Like if someone asked me, do you deny Christ? Like yes, or no, I don't deny Christ, and so you're put to death for it. Like, and so this is what we thought. This is like you don't deny Christ. Like it comes down to your life, you don't deny Christ. But I think when we think about like today, and yes, that's what it means. That's what it meant to deny Christ, and that's certainly true. We think about today. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about the mark of the beast. Like I think that's got to be this chip thing that they keep talking about. And if you get the chip, that's the mark. That's it. I know it. It's the mark of the beast, and that has to be of Satan. And to do so, you're denying Christ. And certainly you can deny Christ by simply saying, I don't follow Jesus. He's not my Savior. But there are other ways that we deny Christ. We can deny Christ. We can deny Jesus by keeping our mouth shut, by just not saying anything, by just living life. Showing up at church on Sunday, spending the rest of your week just keeping your mouth shut. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be a secret Christian. Or we can deny Jesus by just saying enough to make us feel better about ourselves, even though what we said was of no help to the person listening. It made no sense to them. But you walk away going, man, I'm just glad I said something. We can also deny Jesus by how we live our lives. You know, in Revelation, when it talks about taking the mark of the beast on your hand or on your forehead, it's not talking about a chip. It's talking about your allegiance. What you do and how you think. The beast is the empire. It's the world. We may say that we may say that our allegiance is to Jesus, but the way in which we live, the way in which we handle our money, the way in which we handle the words that come out of our mouth, the way in which we handle sex, the way in which we work, it's the way of the empire. It's just that we just live the way of the empire. We say we follow Jesus, but actually my life points to the fact that I follow the empire. I follow the beast. We live as though there is no God. The message to the world by the way we live is that when it comes down to it, we don't really believe this stuff. I know what I'm saying with my mouth, but when you watch my life, you would just come to the same conclusion. I don't really believe this. And Jesus says that everyone who acknowledges Jesus here on earth in front of people, in the end, Jesus will say, that one is mine. He's covered. She's covered. What I paid for on the cross was for her, was for him. But then Jesus says, those who deny Jesus, whether by their words or by their life, whoever denies Jesus here in these days, in your home, in your neighborhood, at your school, in that relationship, at that job, whoever denies Jesus here in these days, on that day before God, though we may claim to know him, we will not have an advocate in Jesus. You know, when we don't open up, when we miss opportunities, we feel this. We feel this. I mean, I think that anybody in the room, I mean, I think many of us in this room could think of moments where we walked away from it and I'm like, man, I know I should have said something. I know I should have, I just didn't. And we feel that. Like, we feel the weight of that. So there's no point in me trying to bring guilt here. We feel this guilt. We feel the shame for the many opportunities lost. And if that's all we did here was just lay guilt upon us, then that might carry us for a week, maybe. But guilt doesn't tend to lead us to change our life. So I think it would be important for us to find some encouragement here. If you're familiar with the gospel or with the gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the stories of Jesus, you know, when you think of denial, you got to think about Peter, right? Peter's like the poster boy for denial. I'm sure he's grateful for that, right? But he is like the poster boy for denial. It's the guy. I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago. He's first among the apostles. He is the leader of the church, and then it's, hey, do you know Jesus? Nope. Hey, aren't you one of Jesus' followers? I don't know who you're talking about. Hey, didn't I see you with Jesus? I don't know the man. Now, what I'm not saying is, well, Peter denied Jesus too, so I shouldn't feel so bad about when I deny Jesus. That's not helpful, right? That's not where we find encouragement. You don't find encouragement by realizing you've jumped in the dumpster of sin, and lo and behold, there's somebody else there with you. Like, there's no encouragement in that. That shouldn't be encouraging. We find encouragement in Peter's restoration. We find encouragement in realizing that Jesus restores people out of the dumpster that we're in. That's where we find encouragement. That's where we find hope. That because God is faithful and just, he is faithful in giving us exactly what he promised, a rescuer to take the punishment for our sin. And he is just to apply the death of Jesus to our lives, to our sin, so that we might be forgiven. That's the encouragement that we find from Peter's life. Now, you remember Peter, what he did. Jesus is going, hey, it's getting ready to happen. I'm getting ready to go to the cross. And y'all are going to deny. He's talking to all of his disciples. He's like, every one of you, you're going to leave. Every one of you is going to leave. Peter speaks up. He says, nah, not me. And then he just throws the rest of the guys under the bus. He says, even if the rest of these fools deny you, I would never deny you. And then Jesus says, well, Peter, listen. Jesus gets arrested. Peter denies Jesus not once, not twice, but 3 times. Jesus goes to the cross. He rises from the dead. And he shows up on the beach where the apostles are, and Peter's out there fishing because, what else am I going to do? My life is as a follower of Jesus, as an apostle, it's over. So he goes back to doing the thing that he knew how to do. He goes back to fishing. He's out fishing, him and some of the other guys, and Jesus shows up on the beach, and he calls them in and for some breakfast, and they all come in, and it was in this setting, in this moment there on the beach, Jesus gets Peter alone and has a one-on-one with Peter. And he begins his restoration. Jesus begins Peter's restoration with a question. It's a question that he asks 3 times. 3 denials, 3 questions. And it's the same question. And here's the question. Peter, do you love me more than these? Do you love me more than these? These could be, do you love me more than you love the other apostles? Do you love me more than the fishing gear, this business that you've got? Do you love me more than these fish that you just brought out of the water? You love me more than this life that you had before I met you, before you started following me? Do you love me more than this? Do you love me, Peter, I'm asking, do you love me more than these? Can you begin to see the connection between love and denial? If we love something more than Jesus, denial is a given. It's going to happen. Peter, you denied me because you love something more than me. But what about right now? Like right now. Now we're on the other side. Do you love me more than these now? Like before you didn't, but what about now? Do you love me more than these now? You see, Jesus doesn't want to just restore Peter back to who he was before, because who he was before led him to denying Jesus. When Jesus restores you, he doesn't simply bring you back to who you were before. You were following me, but your heart was bent toward other things. But what about now? Do you love me more than these? And that is the question for us today. Like, do you love Jesus now? Like, you look at all your life, you look at all that you've got going on, you look at all your loves, the things that you're attached to. And Jesus would be asking, like, do you love me more than these? Do you love me more than that? Was there something that as it stands is off limits? That if truth be told, if this thing were on the line, you would deny Jesus. Either by your words or most likely by your life. What is that thing? What is that? What is the thing that you say, it's off limits? I'm not willing to risk that. Is it self? Is it a reputation? Is it a desire to be liked? Is it family? Is it money? Like maybe your life isn't at stake, but what is that thing in your life that you're just not willing to give up? The price is just too high. And then the question is this: if there are things that I love more than Jesus, man, then what do I do with that? Like, how do I love Jesus more? Am I just stuck? Listen, when you begin to do what Jesus says, in denying yourself, he says in verse 38 and 39, whoever does not take his cross and follow me, he is not worthy of me, but whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. When you begin denying yourself, taking up your cross daily to follow Jesus, what you find is that your love for Jesus will increase. And so what are you living for? Like what is it that you're living for? Like what is the thing that's like just consumes your mind? Are you living for now, or are you living for later? Are you living for temporary stuff, or are you living for eternity stuff? Who do you fear? Do you fear him, or do you fear them because of what they could take from you? And who will you deny? Will you deny him, or will you deny yourself?